The ballroom went silent as my place card screamed a single word: clown. Laughter knifed through crystal chandeliers. My wife smiled, so I rose without a sound. One calm sentence torched $1 billion empire, and when the doors burst open, the real betrayal walked in. Press play if you dare to see what happened the moment the spotlight flipped. My name is Ethan Walker. I'm 45 years old, and I've carried that number like both a quiet badge of progress and, on tougher days, a weight I couldn't shake. My wife, Natalie, is the same age, though sometimes it feels like she's been climbing a ladder that stretches way past mine. She's brilliant, composed, and beloved. At Andres and Rand Designs, the firm where she works, people seem to light up the moment she enters, as if her presence alone flips a switch inside them. I've seen it happen more times than I can count. As for me, I run a small business called Haven, crafting custom cabinetry. It pays the bills, got us a few trips, and kept the lights on through thick and thin. It's not exactly headline-worthy. No one brings it up at parties. I've always thought of myself as the background music to Natalie's spotlight moment, quietly dependable, always steady, and honestly, most of the time, I was okay with that. So when Natalie brought up her company's exclusive spring gala, some black tie affair hosted by their president, Natalie Bennett, I figured it'd be another night where I stood off to the side, doing what I do best. Cheer her on. Let her be the star. She said it was happening at Franklin Hall downtown, the kind of place where the floors probably reflect like nobody's ever walked on them. I pictured myself in that suit I've only dusted off once, standing next to Natalie in one of her elegant, perfectly fitted dresses. She's always carried formal wear like it was made just for her, gliding through a room with wine in hand, and the kind of smile you learn from years of social finesse. Me? I'd just be your guest. Her quiet other half. The one with the easy grin and polite nod. And truthfully, I was fine with that. I liked watching her in her element. I liked seeing her shine. On the morning of the gala, I woke up early, that nervous energy already humming just under my skin. Natalie was up ahead of me, coffee half gone, eyes glued to her phone, flipping through emails like a general checking coordinates. I stood there for a second, watching her, her hair gently brushing her cheek, her fingers moving with that confident rhythm. She looked so in control. Even at 6:30 in the morning, she noticed me looking. She gave me a quick smile. It felt more like routine than warmth, and said, "Big night tonight. Don't be late." I nodded, though I've never missed anything that really counted. I spent the day in my shop, putting the finishing touches on a custom walnut cabinet for a returning client. The sawdust on my hands, the grain of the wood, it felt grounding, like something solid I could count on. Around noon, I paused to picture how the evening might play out. I'd walk in beside Natalie, nod at her coworkers, laugh at jokes I didn't quite get, and raise a glass when someone made a toast. One bourbon, slow sips, quiet smiles, that would be my role. No tape measure, no toolbox. Just silent support. I was good with that. At 6, I headed home to change. Natalie was already dressed, in a deep green gown that shimmered in the bedroom light and hugged every curve like it had been sewn for her alone. She looked like someone who didn't just belong on the cover of a magazine. She designed the layout herself. I told her she looked stunning. She laughed, quick and distracted, as she checked her reflection once more. I tried to smooth out my suit jacket, suddenly feeling like a man wearing someone else's clothes, even though I'd followed her outfit instructions exactly. She leaned in, kissed my cheek gently, and whispered, "Thank you for coming tonight, Ethan. It means a lot." I nodded, throat tight, unable to name what I was feeling. The drive to the gala was quiet. Natalie looked out the window, her phone resting untouched in her lap. I tried to break the silence with talk about a wine rack a client requested, something light from work, but she just gave a faint hum, her focus already somewhere else. I didn't take it personally. It was her night, and I was just there to walk beside her. I kept my eyes on the road, watching the city lights meld into one long blur across the windshield. When we pulled up to Franklin Hall, I could tell right away, it was one of those places where people come to be noticed. Golden and white spotlights danced across the entrance, lighting up the sidewalk as staff in sleek uniforms opened doors like clockwork. I stepped out and straightened my jacket. Natalie took my arm, her perfume warm and floral, and together we climbed the steps. She greeted the doorman like he was an old friend. He smiled, tipping his cap, and in that moment, I saw it. The world was her stage. She was built for it. Inside was exactly what I expected. Gleaming marble stretched endlessly across the floor. The ceiling sparkled like a galaxy of crystal. Servers in crisp black vests moved like clockwork, carrying drinks through clusters of polished people, men in sharp suits, women in designer gowns. A string quartet played near the bar, their music floating softly in the air. Natalie's co-workers were already gathered, glasses in hand and eyes bright. They spotted her and moved in fast, kisses on cheeks, arms wrapped around shoulders, laughter ringing out. I stood off to the side, hands buried in my pockets, watching her glow. That's what I came for. Just the plus one. The afterthought. The silent partner. But as I watched her talk and laugh, I started to wonder, did she even see me tonight? Would she introduce me? Or would I just disappear into the background like furniture? She caught my eye and waved me over. Her smile was still bright, but there was something tight behind it. I walked over and stood beside her, nodding as she made introductions, but no one really looked at me. To them, I was just the guy who builds cabinets. Natalie's husband. The one who'd quietly leave later and wait to hear how it all went. And that was supposed to be fine. It always had been. I never wanted to take her spotlight. I built a life around lifting her up. But tonight, something felt different. There was a look in her eyes, a hunger, maybe, like she had finally arrived somewhere, and I hadn't been invited. I tried to ignore the feeling. I tried to focus on the music, the way the lights shimmered across the glasses, the soft scent of flowers that filled the air. Just a plus one. That's what I was. That's all I needed to be. For now. Natalie had been running on fumes for weeks, maybe longer. I'd never seen her carry stress like this, not in all the years we'd been together. She'd come home each night with that tight smile, eyes clouded like rain behind glass. She'd kick off her heels, drop her bag by the door, and press a kiss to my cheek, robotic, like a habit we'd both stopped questioning. Andres and Rin Designs had a reputation. Ruthless but brilliant. They created everything from high-end hotels to ultramodern offices, and Natalie had quickly become their crown jewel. She'd been recruited 2 years back, personally, by the CEO, Natalie Bennett. And she'd climbed the ladder faster than any of us thought possible. But something shifted this year. They brought in a new VP, Ivy Whitmore, and suddenly, that name was everywhere. I heard it more than my own, even in my own house. Ivy Whitmore had a presence. Even guys in my industry knew the name. I stepped closer. She was that rare kind of woman who could enter a room and freeze every conversation mid-word. People whispered that she could sink a deal with a single look or launch a career with one casual compliment. Natalie spoke about Ivy the way some folks gush over movie stars, and the way it unsettled me was hard to hide. Her voice always mixed out with a thin strand of fear whenever Ivy's name came up. She's brilliant, Ethan, Natalie would murmur at night, scrolling her phone while only half listening to my story about a new cabinet sketch. She just knows what it takes. I'd nod and act like I got it, though I couldn't recall the last time Natalie had looked at me and called me brilliant. During the drive to the gala, the silence pressed against the car doors like too much air in a balloon. I glanced her way, hoping to meet her eyes, but she stared straight ahead, fingers drumming an impatient beat on her clutch. Passing streetlights slid over her face like stage spots, catching the tight line of her jaw and the quick, shallow breath she tried to hide. I wanted to ask if she was okay, yet I knew better. Before an event, Natalie kept feelings locked away, so her perfect mask stayed intact. We eased into the valet line at Franklin Hall, and she flashed the attendant a smile that stopped just short of her eyes. He opened her door as though greeting royalty, and she stepped out, adjusting the strap of that emerald dress with practiced elegance. I climbed out on my side and offered my arm. She hesitated for a heartbeat before accepting, a tiny pause that felt like a hairline crack running through the foundation of our life. Maybe I imagined it, maybe not. The hall itself was architectural theater, marble floors polished to a mirror, a vaulted ceiling disappearing into shadow beneath chandelier light. A string quartet played something soft and costly near the entrance, while lavender citrus scents floated from hidden flower arrangements. Guests in tuxedos and couture drifted about, sparkling wine in hand, laughter ricocheting off stone pillars. I tried not to stare at the opulence, but fitting in felt impossible. The moment we crossed the threshold, Natalie's colleagues swarmed her, shiny smiles, air kisses, greetings delivered like memorized lines. They all looked alike, slim, manicured, eyes bright with ambition and a sharper glint underneath. Their compliments flowed. "You look incredible, Cam. Ivy's raving about your March concept." But whenever their gaze flicked to me, it passed through, as though I were scenery rather than a person. Natalie's fingers tightened on my arm, a quick squeeze reminding me to stay polished. I answered with polite nods and murmurs, feeling myself fade. No one asked what I did, how I was, anything. I was the accessory, the plus one, nothing more. Over by the bar stood Ivy Whitmore, commanding a small orbit of admirers who leaned in like flowers chasing sunlight. She matched Natalie's description: tall, silver hair styled to look effortless, makeup immaculate, posture unyielding. She turned, spotted Natalie, and let a slow smile unfurl, one that wasn't friendly or even neutral. It said, "I see you. Now prove you deserve the attention." Natalie's breath hitched. Then she straightened, guiding me toward the long banquet table like a commander leading troops. The table stretched under white linen, each place set with gold-rimmed glassware and tiny name cards. I scanned for Ethan Walker, husband, expecting something polite. Instead, in elegant looping script, the card in front of me read, "Embarrassing clown." I stared, frozen, 5 full seconds while my brain tried to reorder the letters into something sane. Soft laughter sparked around us, growing louder, like a pane of glass cracking by degrees. Natalie let out a shaky chuckle, eyes flicking toward Ivy. Ivy watched, lips curved in a tight smirk that said she'd orchestrated the whole thing. A coworker with a perfect haircut snapped a photo and lifted his phone. "That's classic," he crowed, delight dripping from every syllable. Heat flooded my face, my ears roared. These people had known me 20 minutes, yet they looked at me like a bug pinned for study. Natalie reached for my hand. I pulled back. I lowered myself into the seat, folded my hands neatly, and forced a smile that felt like biting glass. Tonight was meant to be her showcase. I'd accepted being the plus one. But seeing that card, hearing their laughter, I realized I was done playing the harmless sideshow. This was supposed to be dinner, not a public execution. Yet the gold lettering kept staring back, embarrassing clown, like some cruel in-joke I'd never signed up for. I blinked once, twice, hoping the candlelight might blur the words away. They stayed razor clear. Humiliation slithered up my throat, squeezing tight. The laughter spread, soft giggles first, then sharper notes that scraped along my spine. Natalie's own laugh sounded brittle, as if she feared not joining in. Ivy raised her glass in a slow toast, eyes locked on mine, wearing the satisfied smile of a cat toying with a wounded sparrow. Nearby, a man in a too-tight vest lifted his phone for another picture, eager to capture my collapse. And in that frozen moment, something inside me shifted. I saw the glow from his phone, watched how he angled it just right, like he was capturing a trophy. "Oh man," he said, grinning as he stared at the screen. "This is definitely going in the group chat." Another woman leaned toward him, trying to keep her laugh quiet, but it still slipped out in gasps. "This is so Ivy," she whispered to her friend. "She always knows how to leave a mark." My fingers clenched the linen napkin on my lap, and for a moment, I genuinely thought I'd rip it in two. But instead, I forced my face into a smile. It felt like trying to lift a truck with one trembling finger. I let my eyes wander around the table, watching the faces of people who were supposed to be Natalie's trusted colleagues. Their expressions sparkled with amusement. They weren't shocked, they were waiting. They wanted a show. I was the entertainment, and they were enjoying every second from the best seats in the house. Natalie shifted slightly beside me, her voice thin and composed like it had been carefully rehearsed. "It's just a joke, Ethan," she said softly, leaning in. Her perfume hit too strong, almost sour now. "Don't overreact. Ivy's humor is quirky, that's all." But her eyes told the truth, darting from face to face, reading the crowd, gauging their reactions. She wasn't standing up for me. She was making sure I didn't ruin the evening. Then Ivy's voice sliced through the tension like a well-honed blade. "We're creatives, Ethan. We lean into irony, flipping expectations on their heads." Every word dripped with arrogance. It wasn't humor, it was a slow-motion humiliation, dressed up like art. And for a second, I wanted to rise from that table and say everything I'd been swallowing. But something in me held back, not from fear, but pride. I'd spent my life building things with my hands, solid, intricate, intentional. I wasn't about to be torn down in one night by people who thought cruelty was clever. So I breathed in, slow and steady, and let the fire in my chest settle. And then I did the one thing they hadn't counted on. I pulled out my chair, sat down deliberately, folded my hands calmly on the table, and smiled. Not the smile I'd been faking all night, but a real one. One that said, "I see every one of you, and I'm not going anywhere." The room wavered. Ivy's smirk twitched for just a second. Natalie's eyes widened, surprised. The guy with the phone dropped his grin and lowered his screen. The laughter faltered, as if someone had pulled the plug. Inside, I was boiling, screaming, honestly, at the absurdity, the cruelty, the woman I married who sat quietly through it all. But on the outside, I was still, unmoving. A waiter walked up, oblivious to the storm, and poured my wine without flinching. I took the glass, raised it slightly, and gently tapped Natalie's. She tried to smile back, but it broke halfway through. She knew. She understood what this moment really was, a test, and she'd already failed it. I took a sip. The wine was sharp, bitter, expensive. I let the taste linger on my tongue for a second before I set the glass down, perfectly aligned with the edge of that gold-lettered insult. So, I said evenly, my voice low and calm. What's on the menu tonight, other than me, I mean? The table chuckled, but it wasn't the same laughter. This one carried nerves. Doubt. Ivy's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. She didn't like that I'd opened my mouth. Didn't like that I wasn't following the script. Natalie reached over and lightly brushed my hand, her fingers trembling. Please, Ethan, she whispered. Don't do this. Not here. Not tonight. Her voice wavered like she was scared of what might come next. I didn't pull away, but I didn't lean in either. I turned and looked her right in the eye, unflinching. Don't do what, Cam? I asked, just loud enough for the others to catch. Don't embarrass you? Or don't embarrass them? She looked away, and that told me everything I needed to know. Ivy cleared her throat, slicing the air like a judge with a gavel. Let's move on, shall we? She said, crisp and in control. No need to dwell on a little harmless fun. We're all professionals here. She lifted her fork and started to eat, like nothing ever happened. The rest followed suit, clinks of silverware, shallow conversations bubbling up again. But I could still feel it, the tension pressing against my skin like heat from a fire just out of sight. I sat still. The name card, Embarrassing Clown, rested in front of me like a brand. A label. They wanted it to be funny. To me, it was a declaration. A boundary line, drawn in gold. And in that moment, I knew. I wasn't the +1 anymore. Not in spirit. Not in silence. I'd shown up to support Natalie, to smile and nod and be the background to her spotlight. But this was something else entirely. I leaned back and scanned their faces, each one a polished mask, each laugh a dagger. And somewhere inside, a decision locked into place. They weren't going to define me. They weren't going to strip away who I was. They thought I was idiot trash? They were about to learn what that label really meant. Natalie leaned in again, her breath warm with wine and panic. Her whisper came fast, like a scolding meant for a child. They're just joking, babe. Don't blow this out of proportion. Her hand hovered against my arm cold, shaking. Her eyes moved around the table again, scanning the guests, trying to measure who was watching. She didn't want them to see her discomfort, but I saw it all. Every flicker of her lashes, every twitch of her lips, every quiet retreat in her posture, like she wanted to disappear under the table. I looked right at her, and for the first time since we left home, her mask cracked. She didn't say sorry. She didn't call it cruel. She just told me not to make it about me. Like having my name on a joke card wasn't enough to earn the spotlight. Like I was expected to laugh, nod, and fade away. Across the table, Ivy swirled her wine like a priest about to offer communion. Her eyes met mine and held steady, testing me. We're creatives, Ethan. We go for irony, she repeated, that same razor-thin smile on her lips. It's all in good fun. You can take a joke, right? Heads around the table bobbed like dolls, laughter ready on cue. They weren't thinking, they were trained. Polished. Programmed. I let another smile pull across my lips, cold, mechanical. It tasted bitter. Of course, I said quietly, my voice calm, but with the chill of something that doesn't melt. Backslash. I've always told myself I was good at taking a joke. But that lie settled heavy in my chest, like a stone I couldn't cough up, because I wasn't laughing. I wasn't amused. I was hurt. And I was angry. Still, I'd spent my whole life perfecting the art of hiding those things, masking them with polite smiles, agreeable nods, and well-timed chuckles. I'd grown used to being the extra, the add-on, the man who clapped in the background and then quietly disappeared. I used to think that was enough. But tonight, it felt like a sentence, one I hadn't even realized I'd been serving. I leaned back, letting the candlelight flicker through the glass in my hand. Ivy sat across from me, eyebrows raised like she was waiting for me to snap, waiting for me to lose control and justify every ugly thing printed on that card. I could almost hear the lines playing out in her head already. There it is. He overreacted. Couldn't even take a joke. Natalie had rehearsed those lines too. She'd given me a version earlier, "Don't make it about you." But I wasn't giving them the ending they were counting on. So I let out a low, measured laugh. "I get it," I said, letting the words stretch slowly like smoke slipping under a door. "This is branding, right? Andres and Ren's signature flavor, irony." I picked up the name card, flipping it between my fingers like it was part of some exhibit. Very on brand. Ivy's smirk grew deeper. Her eyes lit up like she'd just won a round. "Exactly," she said, each syllable wrapped in smug satisfaction. "We're all family here. Ethan, you get family, don't you?" The word made my skin crawl. Family protects. Family lifts. Family doesn't slap a label like embarrassing clown on your place setting and call it comedy. But I held back, bit down on the truth, and let the silence hang. I watched Natalie's eyes flit across the table, scanning faces, watching reactions, watching me. Her fingers tapped nervously against the tablecloth, her bracelet clinking like a warning bell just soft enough to miss if you weren't paying attention. "Of course," I said again, softer this time, as if I were agreeing to something that hadn't been said aloud. My eyes drifted to the silverware, polished to perfection, and then back to Ivy. "You know what's funny?" I said, tone light but edged like a blade tucked in a sleeve. "I've been supplying your company with custom cabinetry for 5 years now. I've built your conference tables, your break rooms, your executive suites. I even installed that glass feature wall in your lobby last year." I paused, then flicked the card gently with my finger. "But I guess this is the real brand now, huh?" The air changed. It was subtle, but real. The table quieted. Even Ivy's smirk twitched for a moment. I saw it, the tiny fracture in her mask. Natalie's lips parted, her face gone pale. She reached for me, but I leaned back, just out of her grasp. I wasn't letting her touch me, not after letting this happen. Ivy recovered fast. Her laugh was loud, exaggerated, the kind you use when the joke's no longer funny but you're trying to own it anyway. "Well," she said, raising her glass like she was delivering a royal decree, "we do appreciate your work, Ethan. Truly. Let's toast to that." Her gaze met mine, challenging me to raise my glass like nothing had happened. I lifted it, but I didn't drink. I placed it down slowly, carefully, like a final chess piece. And then I looked at each of them. Ivy, Natalie, every face that had laughed. "I think," I said, voice low but firm, "I'm done being the plus one." Natalie's expression cracked like porcelain. Her eyes widened, her voice came out in a whisper. "Ethan, please." But it was already done. The choice had been made. My heart thundered so hard I swore they could hear it echo through the wine glasses. But I kept steady. I stood, smoothed out the front of my jacket. "Excuse me," I said, tone flat and formal, like I was addressing strangers. "I need some air." I turned away, ignoring Natalie's hand as it reached for me, ignoring the silence that followed, pressing against my back like a question. Someone behind me called out, "Don't be so sensitive, Ethan. It's just a joke." I didn't look back. I kept walking. Each step took me farther from that table, from their laughter, from the lie I'd been swallowing for years. I was finished playing this part, finished pretending that being Natalie's silent shadow was something I had agreed to. I reached the hallway, the cool marble underfoot like stepping into another world. A quieter one. A cleaner one. I stopped, letting my breath come rough but controlled. My reflection in the glass door stared back, pale, yes, but clear. My eyes looked darker than I remembered. And for the first time in all these years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt alive. Behind me, I could hear the laughter creeping back in. The wine still pouring. The show would go on, but I wouldn't be part of it. Not anymore. I'd let them define me for too long, label me, dismiss me, diminish me. Tonight, I'd walked away from all of it. From the dinner, the mockery, and from the company I'd helped build with my own hands for 5 years. Maybe they'd figure it out. Maybe they'd never learn. But that was on them now. I wasn't idiot trash, and I wasn't their entertainment. In that silent hallway, with their laughter fading like old music behind me, I felt something I hadn't in years. Pride. Back in the dining hall, dessert was being served. A tower of chocolate mousse and gold leaf, more expensive than a week's labor. And right in the middle of it, I stood. My chair scraped loudly against the marble, slicing through the low hum of conversation. Natalie's hand reached for my sleeve, fingers trembling in a silent plea. "Ethan, please sit," she whispered. Her voice cracked, part warning, part desperation. I looked into her eyes and saw it. Fear. Not for me, but for what this might cost her. She wasn't scared of losing me. She was scared of losing control. I gently pulled my arm free, her touch slipping away like water from a glass. I'm just stepping out, I said quietly. Every word was a quiet rebellion. I turned, adjusting my jacket with a calm I didn't fully feel. I scanned the room. Then I saw it, the bar. Polished mahogany, manned by a bartender in crisp white. And standing nearby, mid-conversation with someone in a gray suit, was Natalie Bennett, the president of Andres and Wren. He carried power like it was tailored to him. Every part of his appearance was refined, perfect posture, polished shoes, confident eyes. Even in a room full of high rollers, he stood out. I'd only met him twice before, both times during installations my team completed at their main office. He'd been kind, respectful. He praised my work, said our cabinetry saved them money and gave their brand class. But tonight, he was just another polished face in a crowd. Until now. And I walked toward him, step by step, heart pounding like a drum. Every stride carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken slights. Each sneer, every condescending laugh, and all the dismissive glances I'd swallowed over the years pressed into my heels. Natalie's voice trailed after me, faint and distant, but I kept my eyes forward. This moment belonged to me, and to the people who thought they could label me idiot trash, yet still rely on my craftsmanship. Natalie turned when I neared, his expression brightening with polished recognition. "Ethan Walker," he said, extending a hand like a man who'd just remembered a valuable contact. "Your custom cabinetry saved our Grace and property budget last quarter. Truly brilliant work." His praise sounded practiced, the kind of flattery men in his position dispense effortlessly. A polite nod to a job well executed, nothing more. For once, I didn't shrink. I gripped his hand firmly, feeling the pressure in his shake, and realizing he had plenty at stake, too. "Thank you," I replied, voice level. "Your teams have always been great partners, at least until tonight." His smile wavered. "Tonight? What's wrong?" I raised my phone, its screen glowing with the photo from the table, an elegant place card declaring embarrassing clown in gleaming gold script. The letters blazed like an accusation. Natalie's gaze flicked from the image to my face, confusion rippling across his features. "Ask your VP and her crew," I said, each word slow and honed. "Find out why they thought it hilarious to set that card in front of me, and why they laughed." He stared at the photo, brow nodding as the weight of it sank in. I could almost hear the gears turn. This wasn't a harmless prank. It was a potential PR nightmare. "Mr. Walker," he began, concern sharpening his tone, "I'm sure there's some misunderstanding. Let's sit and discuss this." I shook my head. "I'm not here to hash it out. I came to celebrate my wife, and instead I was humiliated by her team, and, by extension, your company." He opened his mouth, but I leaned closer, voice pitched for his ears alone, firm enough to brand itself into memory. "I'm cutting ties with Andres and Wren, effective tonight." His eyes widened. The bar's soft light washed the color from his face. "Wait, Ethan, no need to be rash. Your craftsmanship, your crew." "My crew will be fine," I said, finality underpinning every syllable. "We've got other contracts, and now we'll focus on clients who respect us." He blinked, jaw clenched, hand dropping to his side. "I'm sorry," he murmured, distant, as if the words traveled from another room. "You didn't know?" I answered evenly. "That's the issue. Now you do." I stepped back, heart pounding yet spine straight. A strange lightness filled my chest, freedom born of finally choosing myself over the shadows. Turning, I caught Ivy across the ballroom, her laughter frozen mid-sip, glass suspended. Confusion and irritation flickered in her eyes. Natalie stood beside her, pale and trembling, disbelief widening her gaze. I didn't pause for either of them. I walked out, head high, leaving behind the identity they'd tried to brand on me, leaving behind the silent +1 I'd been for too long. The night air greeted me, brisk and clean after the suffocating ballroom heat. I drew a deep breath, city lights sparkling like far-off constellations, and something inside clicked into place, something that had rattled loose for years. For the first time in ages, I felt I was moving towards something better. I didn't know its shape yet, but I knew one thing. It would bear my name, plain and honest, no mocking gold foil. And that was enough. Natalie still stood blinking, his expression a shifting collage of confusion, disbelief, and dawning shock. Like a homeowner realizing the burglar wasn't after silverware, but after truth. "Excuse me," he asked, voice suddenly brittle, an executive caught off guard by someone he'd thought insignificant. I held firm, hands steady at my sides, phone glowing in my pocket like a live ember. Locking eyes with him, I gave no room to look away. "Ask your VP and her team," I repeated, each syllable striking like a hammer. "Ask why my place card read idiot trash." The words lodged in the air, sharp and immovable, the way truth always settles. Color drained from his face. I drew out the phone, screen still lit with that photo, my name card, gold script sneering against white linen. I didn't need commentary. The evidence spoke for itself. His eyes darted from image to me, then toward the gala where Ivy's laughter echoed against the marble. This is unacceptable," he muttered, but without the conviction of a man who built an empire on seamless deals and bright veneers. Straightening, I felt taller than I had in years. "I respect my wife," I said, the words flowing like a long-delayed oath. I walked in peaceful, but I'm leaving with pride. I let the silence absorb that truth. I wasn't fishing for apologies. I wasn't begging for acknowledgement. I was claiming it. Behind me, banquet sounds continued, distant plates clinking, laughter rising and falling, a violin playing some nameless piece. It all felt muted, like background noise from a life I'd just stepped beyond. Bennett's fingers curled around the phone, thumb smearing the screen as if he could erase the image. "Ethan," he pleaded, voice quieter now, a thread of desperation woven through it. I simply met his eyes, and then turned toward the door, feeling the night open up ahead of me. "You need to believe me, Ethan. This isn't who we are. We value every vendor, every partner. Save it." I cut in, voice calm yet carrying a weight even I hadn't expected. For 6 solid years my crews worked nights, weekends, even holidays to give your firm our best. We've poured pride into every single build. And this, I held his gaze, is the thanks we get. I let the silence hang, thick as dust in a beam of light. He drew breath, ready to launch some polished apology, but I didn't give him the runway. "I'm not asking you to explain," I continued, tone steady as a level. "I'm telling you your company no longer earns the work I do. I'm severing ties, effective tonight." For a heartbeat, the president's mask slipped, revealing the man beneath. The one who'd built a reputation on quick deals and firmer handshakes, yet maybe never inspected the fine grain. He'd let people like Ivy thrive because she delivered results and made the balance sheet sparkle. His jaw set, and he gave one slow nod. "You're right," he said at last, each word heavy as wet oak. "You deserve better than this." "Yeah," I replied, voice low but unwavering. "I do." I pivoted, letting the moment hang like framed art, and walked away. Each step a small victory, proof I wouldn't be boxed in by their laughter or their nameplates. Behind me, Bennett barked, "In my office." "Now," his voice cracked with anger, and something faintly like fear, the sound of a man noticing cracks in his own foundation. I never turned around. The hallway swallowed my footsteps, carpet muffling them like a secret. A few staffers paused, curiosity flickering, but I kept moving. For the first time in all these years, I wasn't acting out a role. I was just me. I pushed through the exit door. Cool night air slapped my face, sharp and clean. I inhaled, feeling the weight of the gala slide off my shoulders. Glancing back, I glimpsed the ripple I'd left behind. Bennett marching across the floor, jaw locked. Ivy frozen mid-laugh, glass half lifted. Natalie clutching her hands to her mouth, as if she'd witnessed the unthinkable. Maybe for the first time, she had, seeing the man she married, not her quiet +1. I turned away. Tomorrow waited. My crew that believed in me, clients who respected us, a future carrying my name. Plain, honest, unmocked. For once, the unknown didn't scare me. I'm the builder, I reminded myself. No VP, president, or ballroom full of fake smiles can strip that away. Natalie came home hours later. I recognized the rattle of keys, the click of heels on tile, the sigh she always released crossing our threshold. Only tonight it sounded strained, cracked. She stepped into the dim living room and spotted me on the sofa, a glass of water in hand, TV off, silence ready to echo anything she tried to say. Her eyes were rimmed red. She tried to hide it by turning away, setting her purse on the entry table. "Why would you embarrass me like that?" she asked at last, voice shaking with anger and maybe fear or shame. She faced me, arms folded tight across her chest as if to keep herself from falling apart. You don't understand how that world works. I studied her, the woman who once stayed up late laughing at my sketches, dreaming up our cabinetry shop. Tonight, something different flickered behind her gaze, resentment mixed with panic. That world, I repeated, tasting the phrase. The world where your boss thinks it's hilarious to call your husband idiot trash. The world where you sit there and let them laugh at me like I'm invisible. That world. Silence dropped between us, heavy as a beam. She flinched, arms tightening. It was just a joke, she insisted, voice pitched too high, brittle. Ivy's humor is what? I cut in, sharper than planned. Her way of humiliating people who don't fit her idea of creative? Reminding everyone they're superior. I set my glass on the coffee table, soft clink, but final as a slammed door. You laughed, Natalie. You laughed with them. Then you told me not to make it about me. Tears glossed her eyes. I didn't mean to, but you did, I said, softer now, yet firm. You chose them. You let them define me. And that's something I can't just swallow. She sat across from me, posture rigid, hands clasped so hard her knuckles blanched. You don't get it, she whispered hoarsely. Every day in that office is a test. Ivy is ruthless. A single misstep, and you're gone. You have no idea how hard I've had to fight. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, locking onto her eyes. Then maybe I don't belong in your world anymore, I said, each word a quiet detonation between us. Her breath caught. For a moment I thought she might cry. But she only blinked hard, pressing her lips together until they turned a bloodless line. So that's it, she asked, voice flat as a level. You're really just going to walk away? I inhaled, slow, controlled. No, Natalie, I said evenly. You're the one who walked away, maybe not with your feet, but with your silence, with your laugh, with the way you sat there and refused to stand up for me. I rose, deliberate, unhurried, like a man reclaiming ground he'd ceded for too long. I'm finished pretending my place is behind you, waiting for you to remember I'm here. Her eyes flooded, yet she stayed motionless. Ethan, she breathed, but the name felt borrowed from some other story. I turned toward the kitchen, needed space, needed air. Her stare bored into my back, weighted by everything left unsaid, but I denied her the comfort of looking. Not this time. The house felt cavern quiet. The wall clock ticked like a slow metronome, stretching each second thin. Gripping the counter's cold granite, I grounded myself. I pictured the years we'd built together, late nights, shared dreams, whispered vows. And every instance I'd put her needs ahead of mine, playing the plus one, the easy grin amid frosty smiles. They'd called me idiot trash, and she'd laughed. I pivoted to face her, heart suddenly calm. I love you, I said softly. I love the woman who cheered my wins, who squeezed my hand when things got rough. I don't know where she went, Natalie. I'm not sure she's coming back. And I can't keep waiting. Her lips trembled, sears brimmed, yet still no words. Maybe that silence was her answer. I walked past her into the living room, steps quiet but certain, shedding the part of me that let her world define mine. Outside, night air greeted me, crisp, charged with possibility. On the porch I paused, soaking in the stars and the hush of wind. I wasn't sure what tomorrow's battles or talks would look like, but I knew this. A table of suits and a wife too scared to defend me would never again assign my worth. Her silence cut deeper than any insult, and I think she realized I was right. That recognition felt like a key clicking open. Freedom. Me. 3 days later, the morning sun slanted through the kitchen, bright as an accusation. I stood at the counter, coffee in hand, staring at the stainless steel sink I'd installed years ago with pride, a milestone back then. Now it felt like a relic from a life that no longer fit. One sip bitter and grounding, then the doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. Setting the mug down, I headed to the entry, half expecting Natalie with fresh apologies. Instead, a courier in a navy jacket waited, a small box balanced in his palms. Mr. Walker, he confirmed, glancing at the label before handing it over. That's me, I said, accepting the package. His eyes flicked to the sender, Haven-built cabinetry. He gave a curt nod and retreated to his van. Door closed, box suddenly heavier than its size. I carried it to the kitchen table, thumb tracing the tape while tension gathered in my chest. Natalie had left early for a quick meeting, likely another round of damage control. I opened the flaps carefully. Inside, a stack of letters rested, each on creamy Andres and Wren letterhead that once symbolized opportunity. The first bore Natalie Bennett's signature. Unfolding the stiff sheet, I read his measured regret. words polished yet impersonal. Dear Mr. Walker, please accept my deepest apologies for the incident at the gala. It does not reflect our values or the respect we hold for your craftsmanship. An internal review is underway to prevent any recurrence. I let the letter drift to the table, exactly the top-floor gesture I'd expected. Reaching for the next envelope, I paused, weight of the moment pressing down. This one was handwritten, ink smudged, script hurried but heartfelt. Dear Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never imagined Ivy would go that far. I've always admired your work and how you support Natalie. I recorded Ivy bragging about the prank and already sent the audio to Bennett. I hope it helps. Zoe. Heart pounding, I read it twice. Zoe. Quiet, capable, polite. The colleague whose eyes had dropped while Ivy laughed. She'd risked a lot to prove not everyone shared that cruelty. At the bottom of the box lay a third letter, typed and signed at the top. It was Ivy Whitmore's resignation. Effective immediately, I resigned my position at Andres and Wren Designs. I regret any actions that may have caused harm to the firm or its partners. No apology, no ownership, just a cold full stop and a signature. I stacked the letters neatly, leaned back, and took in the too bright, too still kitchen. Natalie would eventually walk in, find that box, read those pages, and finally understand what her silence had cost. A knock jarred me from thought. I opened the door to another deliverman, this time balancing a thick pile of folders stamped proposal. He offered them with a courteous nod. Mr. Walker, these are from the companies that reached out after the gala. I took the bundle, feeling its weight, and realized opportunity can sprout even from broken marble floors. I thanked him quietly and brought the stack inside. Sitting at the kitchen table beside the letters, I started flipping through the folders. Each one carried a different logo, some bold and modern, some elegant and classic. Design firms, construction companies, boutique architectural studios. A few names I recognized. Others were new. But every single one of them wanted to work with me. They wanted Haven built on their blueprints, their brochures, their buildings. A dry laugh slipped out, quiet, but real. I had walked away from Andres and Wren thinking I might be throwing it all away. Turns out, I just opened a door I didn't know was there. Something new. Something better. My phone buzzed on the table. Another email. This one from a firm I'd never even pitched to. Mr. Walker, we heard about the situation at Andres and Wren. We'd love to speak about a potential partnership with Haven Built. Your integrity and craftsmanship are exactly what we're looking for. Integrity. A word that tasted like home when I said it in my head. The front door opened softly. Natalie's heels echoed across the hardwood like a memory. I turned as she entered the kitchen. Her face was tired, eyes swollen, hair yanked back too tight, like she tried to keep herself together with tension alone. She spotted the box, the letters, the stack of folders, and all the color drained from her face. Ethan, she began. I raised a hand. Gentle, not cruel, but firm. Read them, I said. All of them. She sat without protest. One by one, she picked up the letters, her hands trembling at the edges. She read Bennett's note, her lips parting. She reached Zoe's message and her whole body shifted, shoulders slumped, face contorting. Then she opened the resignation letter, Ivy's, and her hands froze. When she finally looked up, her eyes were glossy. I didn't know they'd do this, she whispered. I thought you thought it was a joke, I said, voice low, steady. A joke that cost them 3 employees and a brand's reputation. I gestured toward the stack of new proposals. And it cost you your place there too. Her eyes widened, and her voice cracked. They put me on leave, she said quietly. Pending investigation. I nodded. Because you didn't speak up. Because you let them believe that kind of thing was normal. She wiped her face, hands still shaking. I didn't think it would go that far. You didn't think. I interrupted, not cruelly, but clearly. You didn't think about me. Or us. You let them decide what mattered. The silence that followed was long and uncertain. Like a bridge stretching between us. Neither of us sure how to take the first step. And yet, in that space, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness for her, not yet. But for myself. For letting it get this far. For believing that being the silent plus one was all I'd ever be. I stood, gathered the letters, lined the proposals into a neat pile. I've got work to do, I said. And a team that believes in me. She nodded, tears spilling now without hesitation. I didn't go to her. Not yet. Outside, the The sun hung high. The world felt open again. And my name, my business, had never been stronger. As I stepped out to the workshop, I knew without question. I wasn't the man they labeled at that table anymore. I was the man who walked away and built something better. The house had grown still again, but it wasn't the silence that comes after shouting. It was something heavier, a kind of waiting, like the air itself was holding its breath. Natalie sat across from me at the dinner table, the same table where we used to toast over takeout, laughing after long days. Tonight, there were no glasses, no food, just her, me, and the weight of everything we hadn't said. She pushed her barely touched plate aside, lowered her gaze to her hands. No makeup, no earrings, just a black sweater and jeans, stripped of the polish. She looked younger, smaller, like the Natalie I'd first met, the one who still talked about dreams instead of checklists. "I don't know who I am without that job," she said finally, her voice shaking like the truth had never made it out before. "I thought if I stayed late enough, impressed the right people, Ivy, Natalie, if I just kept climbing, I'd matter." I said nothing. I just listened. She wasn't pitching anything. She wasn't defending herself. She was just Natalie. Raw. Unsure. Finally honest. Her eyes dropped. I spent years trying to prove I belonged at that firm. And somewhere in all of it, I stopped defending the parts of me that did belong. Her fingers fidgeted with the seam of the tablecloth. Then she whispered, "Like you. Us." My throat tightened. There it was. Not anger, not anymore. Not even resentment. Just something heavier. A kind of grief for the us we used to be. We used to be strong. Messy, yes, but real. We sat at this very table 5 years ago mapping out the Haven build expansion. Back when my tools and her vision made sense together. Somewhere along the way, our rhythm broke. At first a beat missed. Then silence. "You didn't lose yourself, Cam," I said, voice even. "You just stopped protecting the parts that mattered." She met my eyes, and they were filled with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Something unguarded. Something real. "I didn't know how to stop," she said, barely above a whisper. Everything kept moving so fast. Ivy gave me chances, attention. I thought if I stayed on her good side, if I kept showing up, maybe she'd make room for me. And somewhere along the way, I became her. I looked down at the tabletop, the grain beneath my hand. I had carved this table, shaped it, sanded it, sealed it, with my hands, with my time. And now it held this moment like a confession. "You stood by her while she humiliated me," I said softly. "That wasn't business, Cam. That was basic human respect." "I know," she whispered. Her voice cracked mid-word. "I know, and it's killing me." Tears fell, but she didn't sob. Natalie never cried loud. Even now, her pain came quietly, like she didn't want to trouble anyone with it. She wiped her face with the sleeve of her sweater. But the tears didn't stop. I kept telling myself it wasn't a big deal, that you'd brush it off. "You always do." Her voice quivered. "But when you walked away, when you told Bennett you were done." She paused, swallowing. "I saw it. I saw who you were. The man I stopped seeing a long time ago." I didn't speak right away. I had so many things I could have said. But I learned something these past few days. There's a difference between filling silence and changing something with truth. I waited her out, letting the pause speak for me. "I forgot," she murmured, almost to herself, "how much strength it takes just to stay kind. You've carried things I never even noticed, letting me shine while you bore the weight. And then I let them mock you like you were disposable." I finally answered. "You didn't just let them laugh, Cam," I said quietly. "You joined in." That struck her. She winced, her face folding inward, the way a frame buckles under too much stress. "I was scared," she admitted, voice small. Terrified that if I spoke up, I'd be next. Ivy would turn on me. I'd lose everything I'd fought for. "You lost it anyway," I said, not to injure, but because it was the truth. She nodded slowly. "I know." Silence settled again, but this time it wasn't a blade. It was a construction site, painful, messy, maybe leading towards something new. We were both staring at the same blueprint, unsure if we should rebuild the old structure or draw something completely different. I truly looked, at her. Not the polished woman from the gala, not the deadline-driven voice on a speakerphone, but the woman I'd met years ago at a woodworking expo, the one who lingered by my booth because she loved the dovetail joints in a cherrywood drawer. She used to believe in detail and effort. Somewhere she'd traded that for speed and power. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to remember. "I don't know what comes next," I said at last. I'm not making promises. She wiped her cheeks and nodded. I'm not asking for promises. I just needed you to know. I see it now. I see you. It wasn't a formal apology, but it was worth more acknowledgement. Sometimes healing starts not with grand gestures, but with finally being seen. No excuses, no gloss. We didn't plan reconciliation that night. We didn't map out how to glue the marriage back together. That would come later, if it came at all. But we did talk about truth, the winding road that had led us here, the way something beautiful became background noise. For the first time in ages, I fell asleep without bitterness crowding my chest. The hurt remained, but the bitterness was gone, leaving room, if not for us just yet, then at least for clarity, dignity, and peace. I never raised my voice. Didn't flip a table or fling a glass. I refused to give them the fireworks they expected. Instead, I simply stood, walked away from a table that no longer deserved me, and told the company president, I'm cutting ties. That line wasn't only about a contract, it was about my entire life. I was walking away from years of being minimized in polished jokes, from the slow erosion of small sacrifices, from the lie that being someone's plus one meant being less. Choosing self-respect was terrifying, but once I started saying no, everything shifted fast. My inbox, once filled with routine purchase orders from Andres and Ren, now overflowed with intros from competitors, clean proposals, and notes from people who'd admired my work from a distance. The firm that called me idiot trash did more for my reputation in one shameful night than a decade of quiet craftsmanship ever had, an irony almost poetic. Natalie, meanwhile, stayed silent those first days. Her temporary leave stretched into something indefinite. Her name, once praised, now came with the phrase under review. We spoke only as needed, no yelling, just space and reflection. One afternoon I was in the workshop, sanding a walnut slab, letting the hum of the sander calm a restless corner of my mind. The wood grain, the smell of sawdust, this was my rhythm, my grounding. I paused, ran a palm across the smooth edge, and felt honest workmanship under my fingertips. That was who I'd always been, who I wanted to stay. I kept replaying the moment I saw that card, embarrassing clown in elegant gold cursive. The words stung, but what cut deeper was the laughter and her silence. Yet I'd smiled, not because it was okay, but because I'd already decided to leave. Sometimes walking away is louder than any outburst. Messages poured in. A fabricator wrote, "Been there, respect." A rival design firm owner said, "There's dignity in restraint. Let's collaborate." Their gala had been Ivy's stage, but how I exited became my own story. I wasn't chasing revenge, only clarity. 10 days later, Natalie came to the workshop. She hovered in the doorway the way she used to, before life got too busy. I kept sanding, giving her room to decide why she was here. I saw the newest proposal, she said, meaning Maddox Designs, Andres and Ren's toughest competitor. It's solid. They're smart to approach you. I powered down the sander, wiped my hands. They're respectful, I replied. She stepped inside. I used to be. Silence filled the space, honest, not hostile. It doesn't fix things, she said softly, but thank you for not making a scene. For showing grace when I didn't. I met her eyes. It wasn't grace, Cam. It was choosing myself, something I should have done long ago. She nodded, tears welling but staying put. I see that now. And I believe she did, recognizing not just the damage, but the quiet strength it takes to stand without applause, to leave without slamming a door. Not to hurt her, but to remember who I was before the laughter and the compromises. A builder, a craftsman, a man who holds his own name with quiet pride. That night at the gala, I walked away from a table full of people who thought they could define me. What they never grasped was, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward someone I'd almost forgotten. I kept moving forward, toward dignity, toward calm, toward a version of myself that never needed a spotlight to count. Maybe even toward a future that was undeniably mine. Not once did I shout. I didn't smash a glass or overturn a chair. That night, when I rose from the table and strolled away, anger wasn't my fuel, clarity was. For the first time in years, I didn't feel overlooked, second tier, or small. I felt solid, anchored. And when I told Natalie Bennett, I'm cutting ties, I wasn't just talking to a corporation, I was addressing every force that ever tried to tell me I didn't belong. Natalie's silence, the laughter, the place card, the hollow sorry nots, their voices blurred into white noise I'd taught myself to tolerate in the name of keeping the peace, in the name of a partnership that stopped resembling love. But that evening I made the choice I should have made long ago. I chose myself. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't theater. It was self-respect, A quiet, unshakable refusal to let anyone else set the price of my worth. For years I'd stood just outside the circle, shaping hardwood into beauty while others spun illusions out of jargon. They'd snicker at the simplicity of my trade, never grasping that their champagne toast happened in rooms I had crafted, at tables I had built, inside buildings my crew had fitted out. They stayed blind to the hands that held up their foundation until those hands finally let go. Natalie, my wife, my supposed partner, recognized that truth only after I'd stepped away. Maybe that's the harshest part. She saw who I was too late. Yet I still spared her a dramatic exit. No slam doors, no social media manifestos, just a man leaving with his spine straight. And somehow, that quiet exit echoed louder than any tirade could have. Now, when I catch my reflection, I don't see the guy they mocked or mislabeled. I see the man who got up and walked. The builder who rebuilt himself, not despite the insult, but because of it. Each evening, when I set my tools aside, palms dusted with cedar and purpose beating steady in my chest, I understand exactly what that moment was. It was the instant I chose peace over approval, self-honor over cheap applause. It was the second I remembered my own name. And that, I've learned, is what genuine love and true dignity look like, even if it means beginning again from scratch.